Ladies and gentlemen, my name is TotalBiscuit. It's been a little while since we've done an MMO. I think it's about time that we change that, so welcome to the Beta of Neverwinter. This is the Press Beta right now, and I'm actually here with a couple of guys from Cryptic, and I also brought Zook and Jenna along for the ride because we need some experienced people that actually know what they're doing, and I'm certainly not one of them, so I'm able to introduce to you, I believe, is it Zeke or Zeke? Which do you prefer?
Yeah, no, it's Zeke. It's short for Ezekiel.
There we go.
Zeke Sparks.
Yep.
I'm the lead designer on Neverwinter.
Excellent. And we also have a silent partner in the form of Chris.
Yeah, Chris Matz is our lead system designer, so you get lots of number crunching going with you today.
Always wonderful. Okay, so what is Neverwinter? What kind of state is the game in before we start getting into the nitty-gritty?
Okay, so Neverwinter is, as you already said, it's in closed beta. This is our first. The press is getting a sneak peek at our first closed beta. So it's, there's some warts, there's some bumps and bruises in here, but in general, it's together, it's ready, it's good to go, and we're spending lots of time polishing it, making it super slick and awesome. The game itself, what we're shooting for is to make sure that we have a really good action RPG combat MMO. And when I say that, it's not just making sure that attacks are happening fast or that things don't go on cooldown as much. Position matters. What's happening in the combat matters. So you'll see a lot when you go into we're going to take you into the Cloak Tower, which is one of our first dungeons. You'll see a lot of enemies putting down red splats that you have to get out of the way of. Different classes are going to want to be in different positions in combat. As the rogue, you're going to want to be flanking always, so that you get extra damage going on. Clerics are going to want to hang back so they can heal from a distance. And all that time, you're going to have to react to what's going on inside. So combat is mobile. You have to pay attention to what's going on. We've got, to bring you right into that action, we've got this locked-in mouse look. So there's no cursor when you're playing in combat. We just really want to make sure that you're attached to the character and you get a really visceral combat feel. It's also one of the things that, and I'll say it in a way that maybe sounds a little strange, but when we say it, people don't really believe it. It is free to download and free to play. We used to just say free to play, and then people would ask us what the box cost was or what the sub fee was. So
yeah,
nothing. Client's free, playing is free. This is from ground up an entirely free to play game, which has been great designing for us. We've done some conversions and taking all that knowledge and making a really good solid game from the beginning with none of the restraints of a box purchase or of a subscription has been a huge boon. And then, obviously it's Dungeons and Dragons. We want it to just ooze Dungeons and Dragons. We've got pretty much everybody on this team is a giant D&D nerd. All of us were playing in our parents' basements, and now we get to actually bring it to life in a computer game. So we love the IP. We work super closely with Wizards of the Coast to make sure that everything we're doing actually matches with all of the history of Forgotten Realms. It's a lot of history.
Indeed it is, yeah. There's quite a lot of history in terms of the actual role-playing game as well as video games, even MMOs, in fact. This is certainly not the first D&D MMO. There is already one out on the market. So before we go into the nitty-gritty and we talk about skills and feats and we actually go through the skills that this character, the Trickster Rogue, actually has here, I'd like to first bring up a question that I feel a lot of viewers have probably got on their minds, and that is, well, what's the difference between this and the existing Dungeons & Dragons MMO by Turbine?
Well, one of the big differences is that we are in Forgotten Realms, one of the most beloved settings for D&D, and we're picking up the story right where it's being left off by right where WotC has brought it through the Cataclysm, right where Salvatore has brought it through the eruption of Mount Hote now. We're picking up where that story is and just carrying it forward. So it's a different setting. And also that focus on action combat, that action feeling in the game, we feel sets it apart from other MMOs out there, not just Dungeons & Dragons Online. But.
Fair enough. Well, action MMOs do seem to be, I wouldn't even call it the flavor of the month, because obviously it's MMOs. It takes a little while to code these things, but it's definitely, it seems like the way that MMOs are currently progressing is in this direction, away from strictly hotkey-based combat, which is very much essentially just dice rolls under the hood, right, with lock-on attacks, into something a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more visceral, that involves a lot more clicking and a lot more direct contact with the enemy.
Yeah, you bet. We think it's something that makes the combat more exciting and more fun. We think it brings you into the game more, and it also makes skill play more of a role. So it's like you said, it's not just dice rolls behind the screen. You actually have to be paying attention in the right spot, reacting, moving. So you don't just walk up and hit an auto attack and let it run while you eat your sandwich.
Certainly. All right, well, that's fair enough. We'll be looking at just how well that system holds up when we get into the dungeon that we're going to be showing off today. But before that, we've got a little bit of work to do, because this guy used to be level 1 and has rapidly ascended through the ranks and has suddenly now found his way to level 16 and has no idea what he's doing. So that would be unfortunate. As well as that would be a nice role-playing character trait, it would also be good to know what the heck we're doing. So let's have a little bit of a walkthrough, shall we, of the current abilities that I've acquired at level 16. And also, I believe there's something called feat points as well as ability points that I need to concern myself with.
Yeah, so if you open your character sheet, you should be able to do that just by hitting C.
Yep.
You'll see there should be a blinking button there talking about your attributes, that you have attribute points to spend.
Mm-hmm.
These are the classic attributes from D&D.
Yep.
They mean roughly the same thing in the game. So if you just click that, you'll have a couple of points. We highlight your primary stat and your secondary stats. Those are the ones that are going to be most effective for you in combat. So you can put them wherever you want. Those are pretty good choices.
Yep, I'm just having a quick look at it at the moment. I rolled a Dex 20 rogue. I could go to 21, I assume. Now, is it going to tell me the bonus that I'm going to get from doing this before I actually commit it?
I'm not on that screen right now. I already spent my points.
Well,
it's going to add
out.
1. If you mouse over the attribute on the left, it'll bring up a nice little tooltip that will actually show you what kind of bonus you get. I don't remember if it shows you after you've selected, before you hit commit. I don't remember if it shows you what the bonus will go to, but it'll give you a really good idea.
But yeah, I can see that if I add dexterity, I'm going to get crit chance, I'm going to get AoE damage resist, always nice for someone a little bit fragile, as well as deflection chance. So, yep, more crit strike is always good for me. And I think I might throw a point in strength as well for just a flat damage bonus, as well as dot damage resistance. So yeah, we can go with that, and then I can accept, yes, I do wish to increment those attributes, thank you very much. And what that's done is, that has given me an extra % in pretty much everything by the looks of it, so.
Yeah. And then your next set of points that you need to spend are over in your feats tree.
Okay.
So over here you should have about 7 points to spend. You can hover over the different, you'll be in the general tree to begin with at this level, and you can hover over those. They'll give you an idea, give you just a little bit of an advantage here or there, lets you customize the kind of trickster rogue you want to be.
Sure. Well, toughness is not on my agenda. Stabbing is on my agenda, so I'm thinking action advantage.
And you've got 3 guardian fighters with you, so I don't think you're going to have to worry about getting stabbed.
Sounds good to me. So I am going to throw 5 points in that, which is going to push me onto the next tier of the tree, which will get me to Swift Footwork, which is stamina regeneration, as well as less threat. That's always nice for a stabber. We definitely want that. And also a Cunning Ambusher, so if I want to be very stealth-based, I could do more. Now, we do have, as you said, a lot of Guardians, but because I also have some ex-Insidia Raiders in here that would quite literally strangle me in real life if I pulled aggro, I'm going to put it into Battle-Wise. Seems like a good idea.
Sounds good.
All right, so there we go. I've spent my 7 points in feats.
And then so the next step is going to be go into the powers window. So you hit P to pull that up. You can take a look at what you've got to work with. I can tell you some of the ones that are maybe particularly good for going into a group with 5. I don't know what order they're on your tree, because I'm on my Guardian Fighter tree.
Sure.
But so you've got Dazing Strike, which is a great ability that'll do a decent amount of damage and also stun your target, so you'll disable them for a little while.
Yep.
There's a Deft Strike, which you'll love because this is going to just help you get into position.
Oh, it's teleport stabbing. Yes.
Yeah, a little bit.
Everybody loves that.
Lashing Blade is a huge direct damage attack. So as long as you're not worried about pulling too much aggro and getting hit, it's a great one to slot in.
Okay.
And then for the daily, Bloodbath is particularly good in dungeons. You wind up doing multiple hits to different targets, and it'll kind of spread the damage around. So if we're getting mobbed by a bunch of ads, you'll do a little bit of damage to all of them. But if we're fighting one boss at the end, it'll concentrate all the attacks on that one guy. So it's pretty versatile.
Looks good. So what I'm seeing here is that I have a fairly limited number of abilities that I can use at any given time. So I've got these dailies. There seem to be 2 slots, but one is, of course, locked because it's level restricted. So I guess I drag the Bloodbath in there. So that's my daily power, which is on button 1.
Yep.
Then I've got my primary attack, which is Sly Flourish. My secondary attack, which is Duelist's Flurry, which has a chance to bleed. And then my Q is Shadow Strike. E and R there as well. So the way that this is designed is a little bit different from a lot of MMOs I've played that are very much focused on a lot of different hotbars with a lot of abilities. This is actually closer to a Dota-style game, really, in the limited number of abilities you have slotted in.
Yep. We wanted to make sure that you had lots of choices in how you could play the game and how you could approach your build. But we realize that when you're in combat, there's a small number of things that you actually really want to pay attention to at any time. So instead of having like a big hotbar with just tons and tons of abilities on it, we wanted to get you to front load that decision so that when you get into combat, you can just focus on the action. And yeah, games like Dota, League of Legends have a similar style of power allocation where it's you're focused on a handful of really effective powers for what you're doing. And so there's you mentioned the daily, and I'll do just a little bit of explanation there. That's kind of a holdover name. It's not actually a daily power.
It's from the tabletop, from the pen and paper, right?
It is, and at one time, long ago, you did have to rest. You had to stop and rest by a campfire to regain those abilities, and that hasn't been in for a very long time because it just wasn't that fun. So that name is likely to change. But you can see that glowing D20, or it might be an empty glass D20 on your screen.
At the moment it is, yeah.
So as you do whatever your class does, for you it's stabbing people in the face or back or kidney or whatever, that'll slowly fill up, and when it fills up to the top, you'll be able to access your daily, and it'll consume all of that. So you should be able to do it every couple of encounters, so it's not anywhere close to daily in use. The Q, E, and R are going to be your sort of meat and potatoes, big attacks that you can do much more frequently than the daily. Okay. They'll go down on a more typical cooldown. And then the left and right click buttons, the at-wills that you were talking about, those are rapid attacks. You can do those frequently. If you ever don't have something to do, you can always go to those.
Smack them about with that, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I think the accusation that some MMO players, and I mean, we've played MMOs for a long time. I played WoW for 6 years. I played DDO and a bunch of other games. Is that limiting the abilities could potentially be seen as, I hate the word dumbing down, but it definitely simplifies the combat to some degree. Do you feel that this would hurt the skill ceiling and for people that are looking for a really difficult challenge?
We don't think so. We spend a lot of time here arguing about what the best powers are to put there. It winds up shifting the focus. And so the focus isn't on having everything available at one time and figuring out exactly the best thing to use at that time, and puts it, when you really want to get into that high level sort of theory crafting, it puts it into what kind of content are you going into? What are the best power combinations for that, depending on what you have and what your classmate or your teammates are bringing in with you, depending on what classes they are. So there's still tons of theory crafting. There's still a lot of depth and texture in there. But again, even in MMOs where you have just tons and tons of abilities, really for most fights you're cycling through this number or fewer. And it's pretty rare that you actually wind up having to break out the other powers.
Yeah, you're not wrong about that. God, it's like 6 years of raiding in WoW pretty much said, well, I better press 2 again. That seems like a good idea, right?
Yeah, so we like the trade-off that we got for the feeling in action combat for for having a smaller pile of abilities you can use at any one time. And there's been MMOs that have a similar approach in the past that have done well as well. So it's not it's not the newest thing under the sun, but it really fit for the style of game we were trying to make.
Yeah, it seems like you're making a more approachable sort of action MMO that just allows people to jump in and slash away and not necessarily have to rely on just hitting the 2 key over and over again, which, quite frankly, a lot of people are getting very sick of. It was wonderful 7 years ago, but I think that things have evolved somewhat since then.
Well, we certainly hope so.
All right, well, I've sorted my powers out. I've decided to go with a Bloodbath as my daily. I have Shadow Strike because that sounds hilarious, and Lashing Blade as well as Dazing Strike. I've gone with Sly Flourish as my main attack, and I've gone with Cloud of Steel, which is a ranged attack throwing blades at my target as my right mouse button. It's just, it's nice to have a ranged attack every now and again.
Yeah, that's a good one.
All right, okay, so I'm pretty much kitted out, I think.
The next thing to make sure you do is open up your inventory with I.
Yeah,
and
wear stuff that isn't level 1, right?
Yes, that will make a big difference.
Indeed, I think it might. Okay.
There's a little treasure chest in there.
There is?
That an adventurer's reward that will open up and give you some potions and some identify scrolls, some useful things like that.
And there's a bigger adventurer's reward in the box. It's like, this is physics-defying stuff. I mean,
it's magic.
Yeah, it's a bag of holding, which I assume you have in the game in some form, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Thought so, because otherwise I would have just walked out of this interview right now. Just being honest with you.
We also have a 10-foot pole. So for the old school
the references.
D&D.
Oh, yes. There we go. That's what I like to hear. All right. Wow, there's actually another one inside it. This is magical stuff. Okay, so now I can't open the next one because that's like level 20. Also, a grab bag of companion contracts. What's this companion stuff all about?
Yeah, so you get to play with a companion in the game. So when you open that up, it's going to pick from a random... We have a list of companions here. This is special. This isn't exactly how it works in the regular game.
A bird, by the looks of it.
But you open it up. Oh, yeah, you got the hawk. That guy's awesome. So if you look at your character sheet, there's a whole tab for companions. These are sometimes they're animals, sometimes they're people, they're hirelings, or the party is waiting for me. Who's trying to go somewhere?
Someone's getting impatient. It's like, stop talking, want to kill things.
But so you can summon these and use these in regular content. They don't count as a party member, so all of us can use our companions. They have their own AIs that are tuned for the style of companion that they are. So this rock guy that I've got next to me, this Gale of Dur, he's a pretty good tank. So he'll try to keep some aggro off of people. Although we've got 3 other tanks in the party, so he's going to be tough out of luck. But they're autonomous. They'll follow you around. They'll help you out. You can level them up. You can give them certain equipment. There's a system for making them more powerful. I don't want to get too much into that and bog you down. The short answer is they follow you around and help you in combat.
Yeah. So rather than having a pet class, everyone gets a pet.
Yes.
All right. That's pretty cool. I always liked the idea of having a pet class and then hated all the classes that had pets. So I guess it's good that everyone gets a chance to do that now. So the Hawk is here.
Certainly in the future we'll figure out how that works, because we've got there are plenty of pet classes in D&D.
That's very true. Yes, indeed. And currently the beta that we're being seen, which is very early, has 3 classes in it: the Rogue, the Cleric, and the Guardian. So,
yes.
At least the Guardian... Is it Guardian Fighter or Guardian Warrior? I get my terminology mixed up. That's the one. Guardian Fighter. Yep. I knew that sounded about right. Okay, so I need to be wearing stuff that doesn't suck, so let's get that sorted out. What do we have? Smiting leather armor. Yeah, anything with smiting on it probably is pretty good. Words to live by as far as I'm concerned. Say, someone wants to get me into PvP. Let's not do that right now. No, it's like, thanks for the offer, but I'm not feeling like that. We're going to go and kill something else. Okay, and I think that's everything. There's also this tempered dagger. I think I need that on my offhand, don't I? Let's have a look.
Most likely.
Yeah, because otherwise this is kind of going to suck. The blunted dirk doesn't exactly do a lot of damage. In fact, anything called a dirk, as far as I'm concerned, should never be trusted. And am I wearing the right... Yes, I'm wearing the right boots. I think I am wearing pretty much everything that is going to give me stats by the looks of it, so that should be fine.
Well, then let me queue us up for the cloak tower, and we'll get you into the dungeon and actually killing stuff.
Wonderful. I'm interestingly noticing that I just acquired some rough astral diamonds, which I believe is a currency in this particular game. Am I wrong?
Yep, no, you're not wrong. It's a special currency, and so there are certain quests and certain events that will give that out. We've got some stores that sell some really cool items for astral diamonds. Okay. It's also the currency that's used on the auction house.
Right. Okay, then. So aside from that, is there any other form of currency that I should be worried about, or is that it?
There's also gold in-game.
Okay. Fair enough. Yes, I'm completely flat broke right now, so never mind.
Well, we cheated you up.
Yeah, it should be fine. It's like, I shouldn't really be complaining. All right, let's join the party. There we go. So that's all 5. So by this queuing system, is this kind of a sort of dungeon finder-esque system that you've got here that will allow people to join a dungeon with random people, or is this something that it only works within a party?
It'll do both. It'll try to place you if you don't have a full group of 5. There's most of the content in the game is solo friendly. You can do it with a group if you want, but you can do it alone. And then there are places where we have harder content like this. The Cloak Tower is a 5-man dungeon. And in these areas, we have the queue so that people can go in and get grouped with a party if they don't have a full party of 5. Makes it really easy to drop in and get a game going.
Fair enough. It looks like we lost Jen. She'll probably be back on momentarily.
Yeah, I think she hit one of the warts that we're dealing with.
Yeah, well, beta is beta after all.
Yeah, it is.
Definitely the way of it. So I'm just, yes, my Bork the Hawk is still here. That's good. Always nice to see. And I'm noticing even you can actually skin them, so I assume there are various things you have to do in order to unlock better skins for your companions.
Yep, make them bigger, better, and stronger, and you can do that visually as well.
Very nice. Now, while we're waiting for Jen to get back on, there's a couple of things I'm curious. Looking at the UI, I'm seeing there's some stuff next to the minimap that has timers on it. What's that all about?
So we have one of the things that we want to make sure comes across in Neverwinter is we want things to be different each time you log in. We want new stuff going on all the time.
Okay.
And one of the ways we do that is by making sure that we have events that put bonuses on the rewards that are happening in certain areas of the game, so that you're incentivized to go do something you maybe normally wouldn't have done that day, so that it's not always the same each day you log in. It changes up. And then we have other ways of doing that too. Maybe the biggest way is the Foundry, the UGC content, where the players can actually author quests and put them in the game.
That's definitely a very cryptic thing. And
yeah,
that's something you've had in your previous titles.
It is, but it's nothing like what we've got now. What we've had before is nothing compared to what we've got now. And well, you might die if you jump into that group of mobs. Maybe if we don't. He's
going to try it anyway. He's a strange Romanian dwarf. He can't really be trusted to do the right thing. There we go.
So between the events and what we've got going on with the Foundry, we want it to feel fresh each time that you log in. So it's just one of the ways that we do that.
Oh wow! So I can walk over items and then they'll actually be picked up without me having to click on them.
Depends on the item. Gold works that way. There are a few other items that work that way. Bigger loot has to be picked up.
Oh look, a common sense approach to game design. We so rarely get that. Jeez, I mean it's almost like it's a nasty trigger every time you see it. If you've been playing MMOs for so long, it's like, oh great, I've got to run around looting everything again. Huge amount of downtime. But this is actually more action RPG, more Diablo-esque in the sense that stuff explodes into money.
Yeah.
Which I'm entirely okay with, by the way. As should most people be, I would think. There we go. So that's now nicely dealt with. So, thus far, we're running into stuff that is getting absolutely obliterated really, really quickly. So, I think, this is something that a lot of experienced MMO players will be asking. Just how hard can the content really get? Will there be raid content? Are we looking at stuff which is extremely difficult and challenging? Does the difficulty scale in any way?
So, Sorry, I got the same ugly crash that happened earlier, logging back in. Right now, we're in the first dungeon. So this is going to be where it's actually pretty easy. We ramp the difficulty up across the game so that by end game it's what we consider it to be fairly challenging. The solo play stuff we want to be doable by most people, but once we are inside the dungeons, and to a lesser extent we have skirmishes that are sort of staged 5-man outdoor events. Those are areas where we really target challenging players. And so, we always joke when we do game development that we shouldn't be able to beat our own content, because players are going to be so much better at it than we are. And somehow we have a tendency to start pulling back on that. And when we get kind of nervous and we're like, oh, there's no way anybody could beat this, we got to make it easier. So for our end game content, for our 5-man content, we're committed to pushing it out without being able to beat it internally. So hopefully it'll be really hard.
And hopefully it'll work and won't be covered in horrible bugs and things like that. But hey, it's an MMO. Yeah, it would be nice, wouldn't it? A bit of a pipe dream there.
We're trying.
You did mention endgame 5-man content, so does that mean that there's no plans for any sort of larger scale stuff further down the line, or are you going to stick with the 5?
We do have plans for a little bit larger stuff. We haven't really started talking about it. It is focused in the end game, and I think pretty soon you should start seeing info coming out. The constant peril that I am in is making sure that all the marketing people don't want to kill me after the interview.
Yeah, don't worry. My marketing person has exactly the same problem. So. Apparently my companion has gained enough experience to go for training at some point. Very cool. Fork the Hawk is a mighty warrior already. Alright, well, this orc has been stabbed horribly, and loot is everywhere. Okay, so we've got our standard need, greed, pass. How does one do need, greed, and pass on unidentified items, I wonder?
Yeah, well, right now, they'll actually tell you if they're recommended. We're debating whether or not that's going to stay for launch, but we color code them. So if it's red in that window, it means that you will never be able to use that item.
Okay.
If it's gray in that window, it means you'll be able to use it, but you're too low level right now.
Right.
And we added the hotkeys to that window as well. We tried to make need or greed super important for doing content when you have random people in it.
That's very true.
But pretty disruptive. So we've tried to streamline it so that it is as unobtrusive as it can be.
It used to work pretty well. I like the fact that you can also do a lot of the stuff without clicking. I've noticed that there seems to be an emphasis on never having to go out of this sort of crosshair combat mode here.
Yep. That was, it was one of the things that we looked at early when we were deciding to go for a mouse look style of interface. Was, well, are you actually going to be able to get through all of the navigation that you need to in a normal MMO without the cursor most of the time? And so hotkeys have been a pretty big part of that.
Indeed. Although, as some people have seen on my video already, you can just holding Alt will actually allow you just to click on anything. So if you're up for that more traditional interface stuff, although once you learn the hotkeys, I imagine you'll just be skipping back and forth through windows quite easily without having to worry too much about that.
Yep.
Alright, let's stealth in here and get some more stabbing going on. There seems to be some... At least... I see. Okay, there was some little pluses above my abilities. I've just realized that's because I was in stealth, so I get a bonus when I'm coming out of stealth.
Yes. So each class has a mechanic that is unique to that class. And you can see that the Guardian Fighters have a block. That block actually comes with a meter, and the more you block, or the more damage that you block, the lower the meter gets, and there's things that they can do to raise that meter. Clerics can gain divine power and go into a mode where they're using that power to do stronger attacks, and you're all about stealth. And you can actually build the rogue to stay in stealth as long as possible. You can sacrifice some of the stronger attack powers to try to stay stealth more often, which is it's pretty fun. It's hard to do, but it's a different way that you can play.
Yeah, and that's what people really want, honestly. If they're going to be rolling ults, they want to try something a little bit different. And as I noticed, there is some PvP involved in the game. How much can you tell me about that?
I can tell you that we're going to have it.
All right.
At launch.
Okay.
And,
are you sure it's going to be at launch?
I am sure it's going to be.
Just want to check, because we've heard that before.
Yep. Well, it's game.
Thankfully, not from you guys, but we've heard it before.
But yes, we are going to start releasing some really juicy information about PvP that I think will make other people sure that it will be at launch as well.
Excellent. Always good to hear. Some people really like that stuff.
It's pretty fun.
Well, I mean, the action system seems like it kind of would be. Now, for those watching the video currently, and I've played quite a few games that have sort of had this action system previously. Terra Online, Raiders, and also, obviously, Guild Wars definitely comes to mind, as well as games like Vindictus. So it actually feels like it's less floaty than a lot of those games. It's actually a fairly significant amount of weight to it. Now, I'll need to get into another fight before I can kind of test this theory. You did say it was very much a mobile combat system. Now, games like Guild Wars 2 allow you to move while using every attack. In this game, you do have to stand still while the attack actually goes off by the looks of it, and then you can move again. So what was the decision behind that? Because I imagine that's something you had to think about as to whether or not you wanted players just to be able to run around attacking all the time, or whether they had to stop moving in order to strike.
Yeah, absolutely. And until recently, actually, a lot of our ranged classes still had the ability to move while they were attacking. And there's a couple of things that go into that process. The first one is the first thing that you mentioned about the game not feeling floaty. A lot of that is because when we lock the character down for an attack, we can actually have them feel connected to the ground. We can make their animations feel so much more powerful and strong because all that power is coming from the legs and being connected to the ground. So, visually we can make it feel much stronger. And the other part, more recently, when we were looking at the ranged classes that don't necessarily have to plant their legs for every attack. When you're able to move that frequently with with your basic attacks, you have so much mobility that stuff stops becoming a threat, and it's hard for us to put you in peril and make you actually care about what the mobs are doing, unless we make them do it so quickly that you can't really react to it. So it allows us to. Since you have to think about your position and you can't move it at will, it allows us to have mobs that can telegraph so that you have enough time to make the decision of whether or not to stick this attack out or to move on to the next position. And then we've done a lot of work to give people alternate modes of movement so that while you can't move while you're attacking, that doesn't mean you can't move when you want to move in combat. So nearly every class has an ability where if they hold in shift or they double tap and they press in a direction, they will roll or teleport or slide out of the way. Guardian fighters, instead of that, have block. All of those actually interrupt any of the attacks that you have going. So when we lock you down, so you can cancel out.
Okay.
Yeah, you can cancel out of it and still move. It took a lot of trial and error to get to this point. But that's kind of the path that we took, the road that we went down. If that makes some sense.
Yeah, it does. Perhaps most important is the ability to actually explain that, because there is, I feel, a preference after Guild Wars 2 to actually have that. We're seeing a lot of even existing MMOs shifting towards that. Even World of Warcraft shifted in that direction after a while, with a lot more abilities that you could use while being mobile. But at the end of the day, if you have a good reason as to why you don't want to do that, then that's fine. If I'm totally honest, the way that the actual character feels, like So I was kind of surprised, because usually I never play rogues because they feel so floaty and there's no weight behind the attacks. But even here, it's like, just every hit just feels like there is some force behind it, and it's obvious in the animations where that's coming from, as well as the overall sound assets of the game. So, that's the impression that I'm getting, which I assume is what you're shooting for.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is super hard to hit if you can move while you're in the middle of the attack.
That's a fair point. So we're continuing to move through this dungeon. Now, some players really do enjoy very, very lengthy dungeon content. Now, especially anyone that's into D&D, because at the end of the day, you called your game Neverwinter, there's going to be certain expectations from hardcore Dungeons & Dragons players, even though the game seems kind of friendly to new players as well. So, how long do you estimate that a lot of this content's going to end up being when it comes to dungeon runs, and how many times do you expect people to have to repeat it in order to get the best loot?
So most of our dungeons are geared for about 45 minutes. Some of them run a little short, some of them run a little bit long. We have longer ones at the end of the game. But we targeted that 45 minutes to us was a really good time, because it's a lengthy play session, but it's not something that you really have to commit to. You don't have to schedule it as much, and we wanted to make sure that everybody could get in and enjoy dungeons. So you didn't have to make a big, huge time commitment to do a dungeon. And so, yeah, part of that is they're super fun to play multiple times. So we've been playing them. We'll do one, and then we'll hop right back in and play it again. So we tried to make sure that they actually
you went off the cliff.
That they were fun enough that repeating them felt good. And as to how many times you want to do it to get your gear, it depends on where you are in the game and what kind of gear you're looking for. One of the things that you'll notice is, in addition to getting a chance to get awesome loot in the dungeons that is unique to these dungeons, you'll see these seals dropping. So even if you sort of miss your chance to get the gear that you really wanted,
you can trade those seals for other stuff that's pretty similar.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you're always making progress. You don't have to wait on that lucky roll at the end. And actually, if we sneak around here, if you follow me kind of around to the back, there's I don't really want to call him hidden, but there's an extra boss down here that we can go pilfer his loot.
I'm always up for extra bosses. I'm noticing all of these have little intros of their own.
Yeah, just a quick little thing to let you know that it's a mini boss and it's a guy that you're going to have to pay attention to. Although it's pretty obvious that you guys are experienced dungeon runners. This is going particularly well.
Yeah, it helps to have two Insidia guys in there, but yeah, we kind of like to cheat in that regard. Just bring along a couple of ringers, as it were. But I'm noticing that it seems like you've decided to stray away from something that has been prevalent in recent MMOs, and that's telling everyone the abilities before you actually fight the thing.
Yeah, well, we think that most of the abilities, because we put a heavy emphasis on the tells inside of combat, that most of them you can learn fairly quickly and intuitively. Okay. Now we do, when we have more complicated dungeons with more difficult encounters, we're careful that we introduce you to new concepts before you fight a boss that has them. So
you're basically going to be going up against mob packs that have sort of a miniature version of that.
Yeah, if it's something that's really big and devastating, we make sure that you at least have an idea that that's about to happen before we unload it on you.
Okay, fair enough. Oh, great weapon. Whoever happens to be a great weapon fighter would be very, very happy with that by the looks of it.
Oh, no, not turned on for this beta build.
Indeed. It's like we don't have that, so... Oh, well.
So pretty, though.
It's a nice-looking weapon by the looks of it. That's unfortunate, but hey, there you go. How many classes are you aiming to have? I heard actually in a Q&A earlier you were looking for 8 races, and those wondering, you do have racials as well in this game, so it's not something that's purely cosmetic. So how many classes are you shooting for?
5 at launch.
All right.
And we haven't announced what all of them are.
Okay.
Although clever people could do math and look at the ones we've announced and the players playing in this dungeon and probably figure it out.
Yeah, it's not too difficult to work out what exactly you're shooting for there. There's no doubt a lot of very D&D specific stuff that people are really interested in hearing that's probably not ready, although there is obviously this one thing that I should always address whenever there's a D&D game, and that's, will there be the possibility of kind of hero class progression at some point?
Well, that to us, or like the Epic Destinies, we are eyeballing that for expansion material for sure.
Right.
D&D is, one of the great things about the IP is they're fantastic at giving you different ways to grow over time. And so, we have every intention to tap into all of that as we continue to add to the game, which we will be doing, frequently and hopefully it's with good success. So, when I say we have 5 classes for launch, we already have more that we're developing that we plan to release soon after launch. They just won't be ready for the launch. So we plan on frequently adding to this game.
Okay. So that brings us to the question that I suppose dogs every free-to-play game, which is exactly how is the free-to-play business model going to work? You did mention classes there. Is that something that is going to be purchasable, or is that going to be base available to everyone, even when you add new stuff in? Basically, what do people have to pay for, and what can they get for free?
So we haven't started talking about the monetization strategy yet. We will soon.
Okay.
But I can tell you a little bit about our philosophy that'll maybe help answer some of those questions.
Sure.
In our mind, the way to make a successful free-to-play game is the same way you make a successful non-free-to-play game. You make an awesome game. You make an awesome game that people enjoy playing and that they have fun playing and that they don't feel frustrated with. There's a lot of models that we've seen that we feel add frustration to the play experience, and that's definitely not our goal. So, well, it's a little bit of a roundabout answer because we'll be talking about it more later.
Yeah, sure.
When it's something that feels restrictive, that feels like it's holding back those people who are going to love this game, that's not what we want to do. So, we look for ways to make people enjoy the experience and want to hang around longer and want to be invested in the game. And that, to us, is how you approach making it successful.
Okay. Yeah, that's a pretty reasonable philosophy there. I don't think anyone's really
not
going to argue with that.
Not a very straightforward answer to what you're asking, but
well, at the end of the day, if you can't talk about it yet, then they can't talk about it yet, right? People have to accept that. This is basically the first time we've had the chance to really dig into this game because this is a very early press beta build here.
Yeah.
Do you have even a ballpark idea of when this is coming out?
When the information is, I don't. You could ask Christine; she would let you know.
Okay, I will follow that one up. So I would like to ask you as a developer, bearing in mind, you are from Cryptic. Cryptic has a history of MMOs, and you guys have done a lot already. So, looks like I'm able to use my thievery skill to steal a silvery glyph from the wall here. Very nice. Anyway, I'm being distracted by shinies. It's just the way I am a thief.
Excellent.
I'm a dastardly rogue after all. But whatever the case, you guys have a lot of experience, and you've already developed MMOs in the past, and the success of those games has been varied. Now, what I would ask is, what exactly do you feel are the most important things that you have learned through the development that are going to improve the Neverwinter experience?
Well, we've learned where focusing is important and maybe where it's not. I'd say one of the things that we learned is especially with an MMO, especially with a free to play, free to download MMO, it's not as important to have everything in the game at launch, and it doesn't matter if you have everything in the game at launch if it's not quality. So one of the things that we've learned is that it's okay to focus. And when I first started making this game, if I knew then that we were going to launch with 5 classes, man, I would have curled up in a little ball and cried. That just sounds terrifying to me, to launch an MMO with 5 classes. But they're really good classes, and they're fun. And that's okay, because we can keep adding. And when we add, we can get more people interested in the game. So that's one of the things that we've learned. We also have a lot of experience now, since we've converted 2 games to free-to-play. We have a lot of experience there in what works and what players are looking for in that model. Perfect World is an amazing company for support and has just a wealth of knowledge for that kind of a market. And so, you know, for us, it's a really good marriage between knowing how to make MMOs and then knowing how to think about them in a way that makes them have lots of longevity.
All right. Well, I will be there in 1 second. I was looting a chest that none of you noticed because you don't have my roguey eyes. But I actually found a nice rogue bolt in there. All right.
And that's the short list. We, you know, every time we make a game, we learn tons and tons of new things.
Sure. I mean, it's not an easy question to answer. It's like, you know, tell me about your entire development philosophy in about 2 minutes. Go. All right, so we are approaching what would appear to be the final boss. I assume it is because it's got this big-ass axe stuck in a piece of wood here. Generally fairly threatening, and there's some nasty blue guy behind this.
That's a girl. Use your eyes.
Yeah, that's fancy. I can't see through
blood
that.
Scar. Yeah, she's a female orc.
I don't know. I mean, there's a couple of features that might give it away, but it's still a little bit ambiguous, honestly. So I don't think that's my fault. All right, well let's get with the stabbing then. So one assumes that this one's going to be a little bit trickier than the last.
Well, we'll see. You guys have been crushing things. I warned some other teams about what might be going on, but I don't think I'm going to mention anything to you guys. Yeah,
we were, I believe, one of the first groups to ever beat some of the Guild Wars beta content, so yeah, we kind of know what we're doing. At least these guys do. I just talk and look pretty. That's pretty much my role. There we go. You can have a few more stuns here and there. I'm just building up to that nice little ability, and I'm hoping I get to use it before we kill this thing. There we go. Ooh, alright. So that is my dash all over the place and kill everything ability, which seems to work pretty well. Ads being summoned here as well. Alright, very nice.
Oh, I've run out of block.
It's alright, I haven't run out of stabbing. I'll get in there. Stealth in there, around here, and then hit her with that. Turns out that worked pretty well. Oh, she likes me. Right. I'm not that kind of orc. There we go. I think we've almost got this. It's actually, I think, my first experience ever really playing a rogue in a real way in an MMO. Kind of enjoying it. I can see why people like this class. Oh, there we go. And, oh, she brought friends by the looks of it. But I think she is almost dead.
Oh, no. No, we're still good. Yes. There we go. Oh, we lost one.
How unfortunate. Oh, Zook. Okay, it's fine. Nobody cares about him.
Well, we can. Oh, and he actually expired. You can, when an ally goes down, if you get to him fast enough, you can actually get them back into the action. Which the time that you have to do that decreases each time.
But that ruins your DPS.
Yeah,
you can't do that.
That's true. But we didn't get to him fast enough, so.
Oh, how unfortunate. Ooh, I think this might be an upgrade for me. Yes, this is a recommended item. I'm going to need on all of that. Yeah, there we go. Alright, very nice. So, Zook's dead. He doesn't get any items. GG.
Oh, that's too bad.
Oh,
and then we have, if you come down into the bottom at the end of each dungeon, there is a. So that was normal boss loot that we were just looking at. Mm-hmm. There is also a personal reward at the end of each dungeon where you have a chance to get something that is good specifically for you, and you might get seals, you might get a item that is so you didn't win the awesome item this time, but oh well. And then we also make sure that there's a shortcut out. So
yes, yeah, that's always a good idea. Can be a bit of a pain otherwise. Now, we just played that, and obviously it was a kind of first dungeon. Oh, it looks like there's some lore stuff around here as well. A recipe for arcane salad. Interesting. Very, very nice. But I'm going to ask, will there be more than one dungeon difficulty? Do you plan on having that?
We plan on having an increased dungeon difficulty for the end game. So
Okay.
not one that at launch, not one that you can set as a player, but there are dungeons that will be much, much, much harder than the one that we just did.
Right. Okay. So basically, the stuff gets more difficult the further you go up, but we won't be expecting to do, say, heroic Cloak Tower at some point.
No, we do plan to do that.
Oh, okay. Right. Now, okay, I get it.
But it's not selectable. It's once you hit end game, you'll
Oh, right. So at that point, you just default to that. Okay.
we have
no
other stuff to
problem.
do at end game as well,
Sure.
which we're not
Excellent.
talking.
Naturally, because, this is obviously still very much in development, and that is a floating house, which I shouldn't find remotely surprising in a D&D setting. All right, well, that's that dungeon done, so Zeke, I'd like to thank you very much for your time today. This has been very enlightening, certainly. So if people want to go and check out more information about Neverwinter and perhaps sign up for a future beta, where would they want to go?
You can check out playneverwinter.com.
Okay.
And that'll have all the information on the game. We release all sorts of videos talking about different aspects of the game, so you can see all sorts of good stuff there. And it should have the most recent info on what's happening next in our development.
All right, and those boots were quite imbalanced. That's what we like to see. There we go. Now wearing wonderful blue boots. It's always good. All right, folks. Well, I will endeavor to bring you some more Neverwinter coverage as this gets closer to release. Obviously, currently, this is very much in closed press beta, so this is very much incomplete. But I will hopefully be able to update you as we go along, and if you happen to have any D&D related questions, then by all means leave them in the comments section below this video, and I'll try and make a list of them for any other session that I do, and we'll see if we can answer some of the more Dungeons & Dragons specific kind of stuff. And once again, thank you both Zeke and Chris Matz from Cryptic for taking us through this dungeon today, and of course to Jenna and Chris, a.k.a. Zook, the dead Romanian dwarf, for helping us through this content.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for coming and checking it out.
No problem at all. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been our look at the closed press beta of Neverwinter, and I will see you next time.